Welcome to the Wisory Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Wadler, founder of the Wisory, and this is our weekly Wise in 5, where we ask Fortune 1000 business leaders and esteemed professors 5 questions to provide insights to help grow your business and career. I am honored to host this week's guest, Jim Fielding, for this week's Wise in 5. Jim has been a transformational leader in the retail and merchandising space at some of the largest global companies, including President of Consumer Products and Innovation at Fox, Global Head of Consumer Products and Retail at DreamWorks, CEO of Claire's, and his favorite job as President of Disney Stores Worldwide. I know you'll enjoy the wisdom around how investing in culture, teams, and your IP will drive your business to the next level. Hi, Jim. It is great to see you.
So great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And you are wearing the absolute right hat at the absolute right time. And I normally don't do this, but I'm putting on my IU hat. It's got the national championship there. I know we were both there.
It's been it's a week from today. We're 1 week in. Crazy.
Unbelievable. To go from worst to first in a matter of 2 years, mid-season this year, we were still the losingest football program ever. And to be number one and be national champion is just, it's hard to believe it.
Especially because you and I were on campus when we were like 0-11 and 1-10. And I was still going to the games, by the way. It's a really different feeling. The energy, going to Miami for that final game, the energy was unbelievable. Like Hoosier Nation showed out. It was crazy.
It was crazy. I mean, it's hard to capture that energy and anywhere else. I mean, when you're with your team in that space at that time, it was really special. I'm so glad you got to experience it.
Well, yeah, me too. I'm glad you did too.
So I think it's a great example of what we're going to be talking about today, which is about leadership and how big of a difference the right leader can make in a company, right? And just all the different things that go along with that.
Absolutely.
But before we dive into the Wise in 5, our 5 questions, I would love for you to share your amazing background with the people that are watching and listening today.
Yeah, I'll give you the condensed, but I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, proud Midwesterner, son of a fireman and an X-ray technician mom, and knew I wanted to go to a big school. Honestly, loved the University of Michigan, but it was only 45 minutes away from home. And I thought that was a little too close for my parents. I needed some space. And I had this incredible high school teacher that I'm still in touch with, Mrs. Kuntz, who said, you should go look at Indiana University. So I went with my dad, and you know this from being there. Like, I remember walking on and driving onto campus, and I'm like, oh, this is what a school is supposed to look like. And the deal with my dad was he would pay in-state Ohio tuition, and I had to make up everything else with scholarships or work study or loans. So I did that. I majored in political science and did an outside field in business at the Kelly School. It wasn't the Kelly School then. It was just called the Business School. And thought I was going to go to law school. And at the end of undergrad, was accepted into a couple different law schools, but frankly had run out of money and was a little tired from school. And so decided, okay, what kind of job can I get? It was the 80s. There weren't a lot of people hiring liberal arts grads. It was like insurance sales, pharmaceutical sales, or retail. And I had done retail. And so I went into a retail training program, and it was the best thing I ever did because I found that I loved retail. And so I was a trainee at the old Dayton Hudson department stores in Minneapolis before they were bought by Macy's. And then went to the Gap for 9 years. And I say that the Gap was like getting a master's in retail because that was the heyday of the Gap, the late 80s and 90s. And then really, I mean, probably my biggest pivot is when I got recruited to go to Disney in 2001. And I originally went to Disney to run the Disney catalog, moved over into Disney stores as a merchandiser, and then moved into licensing and merchandising. Ended up being at Disney for 12 years, with the last 4 being president of Disney stores globally. My favorite job, people ask me all the time in my resume, what was my favorite job? This is by far my favorite job. Left Disney to become the CEO of Claire's stores. stores, the girls' jewelry and accessory stores in Chicago, got me back to the Midwest, got me into that CEO job, got me into the C-suite. And I did that for 3 years. And then I got called back to Hollywood to be president of DreamWorks Consumer Products and Experiences, and then 20th Century Fox Consumer Products and Experiences. Because my last 5 years in Hollywood were the start of the big media consolidation. DreamWorks got bought by NBC Universal. And then I went to Fox thinking the Murdoch family were buyers, not sellers. And kind of, it was like I was there a year and the rumors started that Disney was buying us. And I was like, oh, there's no way Disney's buying us. Like, we're too expensive. And then lo and behold, Disney bought us. And I knew there wasn't a job for me at Disney at my level. And so I took that opportunity, Jason, to for the first time in my life, I was laid off and I said, I'm going to take a sabbatical. And just for your listeners and viewers, this is fall of 2019. And I basically announced to the world I'll be back in April 2020. And we all remember what happened. Like there was nothing to come back to, right? All of a sudden it was COVID. And that was really my big pivot time. That's when I decided to leave California, move back to the Midwest. I got involved with Indiana again, more involved. I went back to school at Emory to get my executive coaching credentials. And I started really advising and coaching. And then I wrote my book. And the book was a side hustle vanity project. I won't lie. I never thought it was anything but an academic exercise. And then the book got published and got out in the world and started to work. And all of a sudden I was getting speaking opportunities and advising opportunities and had people asking me to write other books, and it changed. My life just changed. And I think one of my lessons in the book, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, is control the controllable, but leave space for the possible. And my life since 2020 has been that lesson, because everybody asks me, did you have this grand plan? Is this what you knew you were going to do? Absolutely not. I literally just doors and windows opened and I went through them. And so today I'm advising and I have a podcast. I'm writing another book and speaking. And I love the variety of what I'm doing right now.
I love it, Jim. I mean, you're just a powerhouse, right? In terms of, and I call it the judo method also, which is you go the way the energy's taking you, right?
Yeah.
And you are very open and have that wisdom to be able to see where those opportunities are, even if you don't know exactly where they're going to take you. It's like, it feels good. This seems good.
Yeah.
Keep going with it.
Yeah. I'm willing to try almost anything and see. I think I've always had kind of a test and roll mentality. So it doesn't mean I haven't pivoted all the time, because I do. I pivot every day, but I like the path I'm on right now.
Well, and thank you for being an advisor on the Wiser. We're thrilled to have you.
Sure, I love it.
Oh, first question I ask all the guests that I have on: where do you find inspiration just in daily life?
It's so funny because I kind of teased it a little bit. I am constantly curious and a lifelong learner. And so I push myself to literally try and learn something interesting or new every day. I mean, that's really what keeps me going. And I love that I'm at the point in my life also where it's about giving back, because it's not necessarily about my success or I've had my career. I have my moments, I have my favorites. And now I really feel it's about giving back and helping others. And part of that is staying current by listening and learning. I mean, that's really what gets me up every morning.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's dive in a little bit into you mentioned Disney and Claire's, but you've been at these amazing corporations, right? Legendary businesses and legendary roles. So when you look back at whether it was Disney or Claire or DreamWorks or Five, the places you've been, what's the common thread that you feel that connects those very different roles in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple. One, that all of those companies were run by legendary visionary leaders, Bob Iger at Disney, Jeffrey Katzenberg at DreamWorks, Rupert Murdoch, and my direct boss, Stacey Snider at 20th Century Fox. So strong visionary leaders. At the core of the entire thing, including Claire's, was storytelling. I mean, that's what I'm about. I'm about authentic storytelling. And so obviously Disney and DreamWorks and Fox are the land of storytelling. But Claire's had a lot of stories too because of the ear piercing and the history of Claire's. And it had been a family run business for a long time until the family sold to professional managers. And so I think the core of it is authentic storytelling. Brands, if you really look at it, even back to the Gap, like I always worked for brands with authentic stories.
Would you
That's
come
what
in
I
and
was attracted to.
would you come in to help them build a story, or would you come in and say, here's the story that exists, how do we refine it, or put a megaphone to it?
It was a little bit of both. I mean, particularly all three, Disney, DreamWorks, and Fox, all had incredible libraries or archives, and so let's face it, they're large multinational companies. And so we were always looking in the archives to see what could we mine from the archives that, IP that we owned already, that maybe had a big fan following that hadn't been out in a while. And then we would participate in driving the new IP that was coming out. So new movies, new television shows, new Broadway shows, new short form, with YouTube and things like that. The teams that I ran, we were always about products and experiences. So we were creating ancillary products and experiences off of the core IP. And so like on an animated film, we'd start working on an animated film 4 years before it came out. Like we'd be in the storyboards and we'd be getting to know the characters and we'd be immersing ourselves in the world and story and figuring out how do we bring this to life in product and consumer experiences. And so it was a mix. I mean, obviously, leadership and management loved when we could mine money from the archives where they didn't have to make anything new. I mean, they loved that.
High margin.
Yeah, high margin. And it's just sitting there kind of in the library doing nothing. But they also wanted us, they wanted to use us to help drive eyeballs and ticket sales and viewership on new content as well.
Very cool. Well,
So a mix.
yeah, I mean, that had to be so fun. I mean, when you're working with those companies in the entertainment space.
It was.
I could see why that was one of your favorite jobs, being at
It
Disney.
was. It was pressure. It was pressure. Yeah, it was pressure filled because there was a lot going on and they had high expectations. And I always say I love the creatives who were creating all that content, but it's like being in a nursery and everybody thinks their baby is the most beautiful and they should be making more money than they are. Like so much of your job when you're the head of consumer products and experiences is about managing expectations, right? Like everybody thinks they have the next $1 billion idea, right? And, there was a lot of ego involved in it. Like there was a lot of creativity and sometimes some of the best movies, the most favorite movies didn't really create consumer products demand or didn't really turn into a franchise. And so a lot of my job was managing expectations, trying to set realistic goals. But I loved it. Those jobs were 24/7, 365. I mean,
Sure.
there was at companies that size, there's always something going on. Always.
Absolutely. Well, you
Always.
just went into that balance, right? In terms of expectations and financial for, a lot of the mid-sized
Yes.
company CEOs that we're working with, where they want to be empathetic leaders, but they still have to hit numbers, whether they have a board or just
Yes.
for their own business. So what practice have you
Of
seen
course.
to make that balance real and not just talk? How can a CEO balance
Very
those
real.
things?
Yeah. I mean, listen, my leadership style has always been one of collaboration and communication and working through the team. But listen, I worked for some of the biggest companies on earth and had really aggressive financial earning goals. I mean, we were publicly traded, we had shareholders, we had fiduciary responsibility. I just always thought how you achieve the goal was as important as achieving the goal itself. And that was just my management style. And a lot of the people I work with in my advisory or coaching, it's balancing, frankly, EQ and IQ, because yes, you have to get to the goal. And yes, you have financial goals and you have responsibilities to your constituencies. But I still think how you do it is as important as doing it itself. And I think a lot of leaders care. I mean, I think they really do care. I'm sure there's some people out there that are just driver, 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 and they're going to get the number no matter what. I'm not as great with those kind of people. Of course, I work with them, but I do think it's about a balance. But I think that's where an advisor, a trusted advisor comes in, because you need someone who's like an accountability partner almost, right? And a truth teller, and someone you can pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Like, can we talk about it? Right? Like, because it's tough. I mean, those leadership jobs, when you own a company, a mid-sized company, or you're CEO of a company, the pressure is on. The pressure is on from everywhere, from your employees, from your partners, your clients, your board, your investors. And I think, when I was a president at Disney and DreamWorks and Fox, when I was a CEO, I always had coaching, trusted advisors. Like, I had that my entire time, because you need to have sounding boards. You need to have people you can kind of play pros and cons with. And sometimes it can be a really lonely job. You know that, Jason. Like, CEO can be a really lonely job, because
I've heard that, Jim.
you don't really have a peer in the company. Like, everybody reports to you, right? Yes, you know that. Yes. It's and that's the thing, is like, especially when I was CEO of Claire's and moved to Chicago, I joined like the Chicago CEO Society because I wanted to meet other people who understood kind of what I was going through. I've always thought two heads are better than one. Always, always.
Especially someone who has lived the experience that you're living, that can kind of, they're not
Yeah,
going to tell
has
you
lived
what to do, but they
experience.
can give you things to
Exactly.
think about.
Yeah. Have you considered? Yes, you
Exactly.
understand, being an advisor and a coach, we don't tell you exactly what to do. We suggest, and we say, have you considered, or what about trying this, or have you tried that? It's a discussion.
That's right.
It's mutual. It's a mutually beneficial discussion.
Yep. And it's funny because I don't know how much you've dealt with this, but there's always these questions about, well, can't AI help me answer those questions, right? Can I go?
Yeah.
And I feel like there is a piece of AI. I mean, AI is a powerful
Mhm.
tool and it's getting more powerful. I always say
Yeah.
there's wisdom in the why, right? So AI may give you an outcome and tell you what, here's a path that people have taken, but it's not personalized to your situation. It's not taking into account all
Mm-mm.
the different things that may be occurring for your company, your team at this time, at this
Mhm.
place in the role. So I always found that interesting
I
with,
think that's a great point. Yeah, it's a tool. I tell my clients that, of course, you need to know what's going on you need to know what's going on in technology, because it's impacting your business. But to your point, it's another input. It's another tool. And still, at the end of the day, you have to blend that with your vision and your experience, and decide the information that you get out of whatever tool you're using.
that's
How are
right.
you going to implement that in your situation?
That's exactly right. Well,
Always.
always.
Yeah.
So you've worked with these major IP driven franchises, right? Disney, DreamWorks. How should a mid-sized business think
Mhm.
about creating and managing its own IP?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of owning IP. Like, I work with all different kinds of companies. I mean, many people who own IP, many people who don't. I because of the first question you asked me in my bio, I am a fan of owning IP because I've seen the power of it. Like, I've seen the power of it with customers, with clients, with partners. It's a currency. Like, owning that IP, owning that story is a currency. And I think it's owning your story, owning your brand, owning your IP, however you want to call it, is, to me, it's a differentiator. It makes you unique. It's got tangible value. We used to carry brand value on, it was a line in our
Yep.
P&L, right? Because it
Right.
was like
Almost
brand
like goodwill.
equity. Goodwill, exactly. I was just gonna say, many people call it goodwill.
Yep.
Some people on their P&L is called brand equity. Like, and again, that's why, I said earlier, when you're a big company like Disney, you're tracking all the IP you own, even if it's been sitting in the vault for 50 years, because
Mhm.
if there's a way to capitalize off of it, you're gonna figure it out. And I think, Disney is the master of this because they have so many different ways. Broadway shows, movies, television, cruise ships, theme parks, stores. Games. There's so many different ways. But smaller companies also have a variety of ways they can leverage their IP. And even if they license that IP to someone else, to do something with, right? But then that creates a revenue stream for you, or royalty streams. I'm great with companies that own their IP or want to own their IP and figure out how to leverage it and how to
Hmm.
capitalize off of it. But I also understand there's a lot of companies that the IP they own is maybe their company brand. Like the IP they own is their company name and their brand
Right.
name and like what they've created, especially like SaaS companies and things like that. Like they own tools, or they own, again, that's their uniqueness, their differentiator. But I think it's critical to understand, however you define IP, brand, IP, or whatever, what do you really own and what can you do with it? Like
Yeah.
I think and for me, that's been my career. I mean,
Yeah.
and even it's funny now, even as a solopreneur, you and I were talking about, like when you write a book, when all of a sudden you start speaking and stuff, now I think about my own brand. And honestly, that is something I never really did. When I worked for Disney and DreamWorks and Fox, I was always thinking about their brands. And of course, I was worried about my reputation and my credibility in the industry. And I wanted to be viewed as a good leader. But all of a sudden, when you're a solopreneur or an entrepreneur, and you're putting yourself out there on the speaking circuit, or you're hosting a podcast, or you're writing books, now it's about your brand, right?
Absolutely.
And I think about, and all of a sudden I'm like very conscious of my LinkedIn and very conscious of my Instagram. And that's been a big change for me the last 5 years, is really thinking about my messaging and my uniqueness and my differentiators for the Jim Fielding brand. You know,
Absolutely.
that's my brand. I mean, I didn't embrace it at first. I'll be honest with you, Jason. Like at first I was all about the title of the book, right? And then I hired someone to help me with my website, and I wasn't originally going to do a Jim Fielding website. And they were like, "But Jim, that's how people know you. Like that's your brand, right?" And so if you look at my website now, it's hijimfielding.com, because I couldn't own jimfielding.com. Somebody else owned that. But it took me a while, I'll be honest. It took me a couple of months to like be like, "Oh gosh, that's my brand. You're right." And I had been doing it for princesses and Mickey Mouse and trolls and, Bob's Burgers and Simpsons at the Fox, but now I had to do it for me. I mean, and it's similar. A lot of the skills I use that I've learned all these years, but now it's about your brand. And so for
Totally.
a lot of companies, especially startups and smaller companies, that's really what it's about.
I completely agree. So, especially coming out of the entertainment industry where they're getting challenged with AI
Oh,
and, how are they managing their IP both as, individual performers and then overall content? That's a big issue right now.
It's a big learning. Yeah. And again, yeah, it's a huge issue. It's a big learning. It's where I go back to authenticity. I worked for, 30 years in the entertainment industry. I have so much respect for the writers and the directors and the animators and the creators. And again, and by the way, they've been using technology and tools for a long time. When we went from hand-drawn animation to computer-generated animation, there was like a whole kerfuffle about that. But I that's where I think like the brand and that kind of good housekeeping seal of approval is so important, especially in this time of AI. And technology has been infecting our businesses my entire career.
Hmm.
Retail, media, entertainment, technological advances. Think of streaming. Think of how we listen to music now. You and I still remember when we were buying album. Now it's cool to buy an album, right? So that's the only choice we had. I had 8-track tapes, right? Like think about the life of us listening to music. It was in 33s, 8-track tapes, cassettes, right? I was working at Disney when we went from VHS to DVDs. Like that was huge. Like, and the whole world was going to crumble down because we were going away from VHS to DVDs. By the way, the world kept
Yeah.
going,
I had to pay
right?
twice for the same movie for my kids. So thanks, Jim.
Exactly. No, thank you. By the way, Disney, hello, business model. Disney was like the average person has 50 Disney movies. I'm telling you, we knew this. The average family had 55 Disney movies on VHS that they would have to upgrade to CD, right? DVD. Think about that.
Hmm.
25 bucks a pop times 50 times the number of families. That was a strategy.
Hmm.
How do we get people to strategically invest in their DVD library? Then it was, how do you get them to go from DVD library to Disney streaming, right? Disney HD. That's technology, right? And
Hmm.
and leaders and managers and smart people have had to deal with those impacts for years.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So
Yeah.
Just moving on to the next question. So many of the
Sure.
folks that are watching, listening, they're mid-market, they're kind of squeezed in that mid-market,
Hmm.
right? So they have good product market fit. They're too big to be scrappy, but not big enough to throw money at problems. I
Yeah,
consultancies. What have you seen these mid-sized operators do when competing with giants? So they were competing with you at some point, Jim, and now you're
for
helping
sure.
them. So what do you suggest? What do you see them do that can make a difference?
Well, I'm going to start to sound a little bit like a broken record, but it's like you study the big guys and you study the little guys, right? I think the people that are in the middle have an advantage because you try to hang on to that scrappiness and that nimbleness and flexibility from when you were small. Because it's like the problem with growth a lot of times is growth brings infrastructure and growth brings processes and systems, but it also can slow down things. It can slow down innovation. It can slow down creativity. And I think the people who are in the squeeze middle, and I agree that they're when I advise them or I coach with them, it's about, okay, well, what can you take from many of them were scrappy and nimble and flexible at one point in their life because many of these founder led companies, they kind of grew up with the company. And it's like, okay, well, what can you take from that? And then what can you learn from the big guys? What can you learn from the Disney and the NBC Universal and the Warner Brothers or the biggest people in your industry, right? The Apples, the Googles, because we used to always say, and you'll get this, Jason, it's much easier to turn a PT boat than an aircraft carrier, right?
So
Like we used to say that even at Disney, right? Disney is a flotilla of aircraft carriers. It's not even just one, right? Change at Disney is actually very slow because it has such huge ramifications, right? Huge multi-billion dollar ramifications. So I think holding on to that scrappiness and nimbleness and flexibility from like the startup life or the founder life is actually an advantage because it's like that's where I often say it depends on if my people understand boats or not that I'm working with, right? But it's like it's about a PT boat is smaller and more nimble and can turn and can handle rough seas and all that kind of stuff much easier than an aircraft carrier. And when you say that, people are like, yeah, right. And so, but it doesn't mean you don't learn from the aircraft carrier, right? I mean, the skill that I talk probably the most about with people I work about, I call it helicopter ability. I look for people with helicopter ability because I love helicopters because helicopters have the ability to hover at 3,000, 10,000 feet and be strategic and hover. But when needed, they can swoop down on the ground and land and get tactical. And so I used to interview for people on my leadership team looking for helicopter ability, asking for questions. Are they a helicopter? Do they have the ability to be a helicopter? Right? And it's okay. Some people on a team, you only have people that hover at the strategic level forever. That's fine. Some people on your team are only tactical. That's fine. But I think in your leadership team, you need that helicopter ability, the ability to go up and down
I think that's fantastic. I've
and
never
read
heard that term
situations. And
used that way,
I
but I think
literally,
it's fantastic.
yeah, with my you haven't? That's my
No,
term. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, my HR partners will tell you, they're like, "Oh god, Jim's looking for helicopters." Like, they'd roll their eyes, right? I'm like, "I don't think he's a helicopter." I literally would say, "I didn't get a lot of helicopter." They'd be like, "Oh god, okay." But yeah, and I look at the people now because I'm at the age now where a lot of my former people that I worked with, my alums, so you say, are running companies or running big divisions. And the ones who are most successful, I would honestly tell you, Jason, were the ones who are the best helicopters for sure. It's like it's that same thing of I listen, Jason, you and I talked about this. I think anybody that you're advising or coaching, anybody that's in business right now, it is hard. There is a lot going on in the world. Like I think it's one of the most challenging periods I've ever seen in my life with the amount of change, the way the consumer's changing, the way the employees are changing, the way competition's changing, technology, we've talked about AI. I think there's a lot of things. There's a lot of stimuli and input coming at these leaders, and they need to like drink it in and not panic and then figure out their action plan off of it.
I think
Because it
that's
is,
very
there's a
smart
lot
advice.
going on.
That's very smart
Yeah,
advice.
there's a lot going on. And that's okay. And it's okay to raise your hand and say, whoa, there's a lot going on. I'm not sure what to do about it. That's when you hire Wisory. That's when you bring in a coach. That's when you bring in an advisor, because I think the best kind of leader is the one who can raise their hand and say, I need help.
I
It's
totally
okay.
agree. I think you're
I am,
exactly right.
I I don't know what to do. I need help.
And there's strength in doing that too. Some people may view that as
That's
a
huge
weakness, but
strength.
that's a strength.
No, I think it shows humility and incredible confidence. Yep, I agree.
Well, Jim, we went through our 5 questions. You passed with flying colors, no surprise.
Uh,
So thank you for that.
of
I have a
course.
bonus question for you. So
Yes.
as folks want to interact with you on the Wisery, what are the things that you would say, this is what I'm best positioned to help you answer?
Mhm. Well, a lot of your questions help me on this. I mean, I am best positioned to work with brands, IP holders for sure. Retail, experiential retail, media, and entertainment obviously are my industry specialties. I spend a lot of time working in hospitality and travel and leisure. That makes sense because they're very related to kind of retail and service. And I think I'm known, and I think my clients would say now, like people who are working on building their team, building cultures, being competitive in today's environment that we are just talking about, I think I'm a great advisor for that. I'm a great thought partner. That's an easier way to say. I'd say for the most part, my sweet spot is consumer services, consumer facing companies.
Wonderful. Well, I cannot wait for our folks to engage with you,
I
the things
know.
that we have. So very excited for that. Thank you for taking the time to share your wisdom today.
Thank you.
Go
Yeah,
Hoosiers. I'm
thank you for
going to
caring. I
repeat,
really
but
appreciate it. Go Hoosiers.
what an incredible time to be a
Hoosiers.
Hoosiers. Thank you, my friend.
Thank
Great
you.
seeing you.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into this week's Wise in 5. Visit thewisery.com to learn more about Jim and book time with him or any one of our acclaimed advisors, only at The Wisery.